Think you've had a rough day? Try living in the Middle Ages, where bathing was dangerous, rotten teeth were trendy, and beer was safer than water. And that's just the beginning. From flaming bedtime routines to bloodletting doctors and pee-soaked jobs, medieval life was basically one long episode of Survivor Dirt Edition. Stick around, because by the end of this, you'll be thanking your lucky stars for modern plumbing, Tylenol, and soap. Number 1. In medieval times, taking a bath was considered about as risky as juggling swords. People believed that hot water opened up your skin's pores, and once those pores were open, nasty diseases could sneak in. So instead of scrubbing down regularly, most folks bathed only a few times per year. And when things got too smelly, they didn't grab soap, they grabbed herbs, flowers, or enough perfume to choke a dragon. If you think your gym locker smells bad, try sharing a room with someone who hasn't bathed since last fall. Number 2. Today, a mouth full of cavities means you've been skipping the dentist. But in the Middle Ages, rotten teeth were actually a status symbol. Sugar was super rare and crazy expensive, so only the rich could afford it. And since sugar ruins teeth, having a decayed smile basically screamed, "I'm loaded." Some people even dyed their teeth black to pretend they were rich. Yep, black teeth were like the medieval version of a Rolex, just in your mouth. Number 3. The word curfew actually comes from the French phrase couvre-feu, meaning cover the fire. Back then, houses were made of wood, and one little spark could turn the whole town into a marshmallow roast. Every night, bells rang to remind people to put out their hearth fires before going to sleep. Now, this wasn't just a gentle bedtime reminder, this was life and death. Number 4. Medieval water was a bacteria soak, thanks to poor sanitation and waste dumping. So instead of risking their lives with a glass of H2No, people of all ages, including kids, drank ale. Not the strong knock-you-out kind, but small ale, which was low in alcohol but high in hydration. The brewing process involved boiling the water, which actually killed harmful germs. So ironically, drinking ale was one of the safest choices around. Who knew beer would be the medieval multivitamin? Number 5. I mean, if you're in the Middle Ages, I imagine the castles look cool, but everything else? Not so much, especially if you're a regular peasant. Or worse, a serf. Back then, society was stacked like an unfair game of Jenga. The king sat on top with all the land. He'd hand big chunks of it over to his loyal noble buddies, aka barons, who could basically do whatever they wanted. And guess who got the short end of the stick? That's right, the poor serfs. Serfs were like renters, except they couldn't leave. They didn't own anything, and instead of paying with money, they paid with sweat and back pain. They worked 6 days a week, sun up to sun down, growing crops and raising animals, not for themselves, but for their lord. And in return, they got to stay alive. Maybe. Now, if you're thinking, well, maybe they could work their way up, absolutely not. This wasn't a rags to riches setup. This was rags to more rags until you die. Unlike ancient times when the occasional slave could rise to power, medieval serfs were stuck. Born poor, you stayed poor. Social climbing wasn't even a thing, unless you counted climbing out of bed to shovel manure. Number 6. Let's talk medicine. If you can call it that. You'd think after 1,000 years people would figure out a thing or two. Nope, they were still obsessed with the 4 humors: blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile. That's right, they believed your health depended on balancing these bodily fluids. So what did doctors do when you were sick? They'd either cut you open or slap some leeches on you to drain your blood. Got a fever? Bleed it out. Stubbed your toe? Probably too much black bile. It was less about healing and more about guessing. And surgeries? They were performed by barber surgeons, which is exactly what it sounds like. Guys who cut hair and also, limbs. These dudes weren't trained doctors. As for pain relief, if you were lucky, they gave you booze or a weird herb. But some believe pain helped the healing process. So yeah, surgery without anesthesia was totally a thing. If you didn't die on the table, infection would finish the job. Medieval healthcare, now with 0% success rate. Number 7. If you didn't die for medicine, you could always earn your living doing the most disgusting jobs imaginable. Sure, 80% of people worked the land, but city life wasn't exactly glamorous either. One hot job? Leech collector. Yep, people literally stood in ponds and let leeches latch onto them so they could sell the little bloodsuckers to doctors. It was less of a career and more of a medieval horror movie. Then there were fullers. They cleaned new cloth by stomping on it in barrels full of, wait for it, human urine. For hours. every day, all for a slightly higher wage than a farmer. Basically, you got paid more for wading through pee. Fun. Labor laws? Benefits? Don't be ridiculous. People took what they could get, even if it meant smelling like a public restroom and getting trampled by livestock on the way home. Number 8. Religion in medieval Europe wasn't just a personal thing. It was the thing. The Catholic Church was rich, powerful, and above paying taxes. Everyone else wasn't so lucky. Peasants had to fork over 10% of their earnings as a tithe and work for free on church land. The Pope wasn't just a holy figure. He could basically outpower kings. He didn't need an army to mess with you. He could declare a crusade and send thousands off to die for holy reasons. Worship wasn't optional. You went to church or you risked your life. Minority religions, Jews, pagans, anyone not Catholic, had to hide their beliefs. If they didn't, they could face torture or death. It was a one-way street. Do what the church says or face the fire. And sometimes that was literally fire. Ever heard of witch burnings? Yeah, people thought cold weather was the result of witches or angry gods. Which brings us to number 9. Around the year 1300, temperatures across Europe started to dip. Like, for real. This wasn't bring a sweater cold. It was, your crops are dead and you're probably next cold. Historians call it the Little Ice Age. But for the people who lived through it, there was nothing little about it. This freeze fest went on for centuries. Rivers iced over, famines hit hard, and people died in droves. Scientists today blame volcanic eruptions and solar weirdness, but back then, folks blamed witches, demons, and angry deities. Cue the persecution and mass panic. When you already have no medicine, no rights, and you sleep next to a goat, freezing to death is just one more thing on the list. Honestly, it's like life itself was out to get you. Number 10. As if all of that wasn't bad enough, women had it worse. Girls were basically passed around like property, from their fathers to their husbands. If something bad happened to a woman, it was seen as damage to her owner. Yeah, medieval justice was charming like that. Giving birth was one of the most dangerous things a woman could do. There were no hospitals, no prenatal care, just hope, prayer, and a very real chance of dying in childbirth. Even working women couldn't catch a break. They had to labor in the fields and take care of the home, all while being paid less than men. Still, a handful of women managed to run businesses or inherit wealth, but those were the exceptions. For most women, life was an endless cycle of work, risk, and being overlooked. Basically, being born a woman in the Middle Ages was like starting life on hard mode, with no option to change the settings. So, do you think you could survive in medieval times? Let us know what strategy you would use in the comments below.